of minutes depending on their association. So the way that it's structured, if you've got a small single family association, it will only ask you questions pertaining to that. Whereas if you've got a high rise, it might be a little bit more complex and ask more questions based on that. So that's kind of what we do in a nutshell and who we are.
Garrett, how much of your technology, this is a niche business, so I'm suspecting that you know a tremendous amount about your customers to a very deep detail. How much of your technology is set up so that the Blue Line Group captures the information and doesn't necessarily ask the client questions that you can go retrieve the information yourself?
Hypothetically, if a client went through the entire online quote, I wouldn't need anything additional. They've got the ability to upload loss runs, current decks, bylaws, budgets. Really, and even if we need anything, it's minimal. It's maybe one or two different email questions, based on that. Unless there's something odd where an underwriter's got a crazy request on a loss. It's really nice the way that the system works is that it really does a great job of capturing everything at once and making that process super easy for, our clients.
And I love the name. The name is supposed to trigger some kind of emotion. And when I hear Blue Line, I salivate. So I'm sure you're taking advantage of that at conferences and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So that's kind of one of the things that I like about the name is that it's totally different. You think of insurance companies and it's somebody's last name and group or two guys' names and associates. It's not out there, and Blue Line is totally kind of out there in your face. People ask us, what do we do? What does it mean? And it allows us to, as a company, to be out there with our marketing and kind of our collateral. I think if you were to go to an expo and grab something from Travelers, grab something from Hanover, grab something from Liberty, and really, if you lay all those brochures out, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between any of them. It's literally bells and whistles of their policies, a bunch of text, and maybe a little picture in one of the corners. They all look the same. And we didn't want to do that. So all our materials got bright colors. It really talks about what we do different as a broker in this space rather than the bells and whistles of the policy that me and 17 other agents are going to sell you. We also have a lot of fun with it. We've got, lime-shaped stress balls. We've got some crazy sunglasses that we give away. We give away some color-changing cups. And we actually have what I will say is probably the coolest insurance business card in the space. It's actually a die-cut lime-shaped business card kind of with our neon color scheme. And, I get compliments everywhere we go just on that card.
And I'll second that too. That is the coolest business card I've ever seen before.
Garrett, can we get a photo of that? So when this goes live on the show notes, I can put it next to pictures of you guys so we can send that out on social media.
Totally.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's great. Chris, the IIASA, you're the co-director. Can you talk a little bit about the Independent Insurance Agents of San Antonio, what their role is, and what you do?
Absolutely. So pretty much our mission is to promote the strengths and values of the independent insurance agent. So basically, we're a resource for the independent agent, and then we also work a lot with carriers and really anyone else that whose best interest is in the independent insurance system. And basically, it's a two-pronged approach. We sell people on the industry that aren't in the industry yet, and a lot of that's working with, we're right now in the middle of trying to put a program in high school to get students to pretty much graduate high school with the CISR degree. We're working with college students, a couple of universities in San Antonio to try to make a pipeline to bring those students into internships with some of our agent members. And Garrett, you've been the beneficiary of that. And we also, we're trying to work with veterans too, trying to get them into the industry as well, because they're very hard workers, very self-disciplined, and it's just generally a good fit for veterans to be in the insurance industry. And also, it's such a mobile job. You really, if there are jobs anywhere that you go in the insurance industry.
Yeah, so you both have careers pretty much betting on the future of the independent insurance agency system. And there are a lot of companies out there that would like that don't necessarily see the value of that. A lot of insurtech companies trying to come into the space and knock the agent out. A lot of new insurtech carriers trying to go direct to the consumer. But both of you have built a future on it, and so we'll jump over to Garrett. Garrett, you're betting on the independent agency system. What's the future look like?
You know, to be honest, I'll tell you that it's going to change. It's going to change quickly. You know, even the next year and even 5 years down the road will be entirely different. What I will say is, you know, if you're a personal lines representative and that's kind of all you do in your agency, the writing's on the wall there that, you know, everybody's going direct. Carriers are, you know, also trying to figure out how to implement AI and underwriting to kind of make that work. You know, AI, Lemonade has done a great job of kind of doing that on paper. I think that, you know, those pop-ups too, Lemonade, Hippo, and some of these other, you know, providers that are coming out with different ways to purchase insurance, those are, you know, also going to come into the marketplace and totally disrupt that process. You know, because as a millennial and as a consumer, people want easy. And, you know, really calling an insurance broker and trying to get a quote is often painful. You know, when I worked at Nationwide, one of the things that I would do is all my new agents, I'd have them go into the marketplace and get 3 quotes just so they could see what everyone else was doing. And usually, you know, that experience was painful. And so in that mind, you know, too, it kind of goes back to insurance sucks, but these apps are going to change that process and it's going to be entirely easy. And consumers ultimately on that front will go to, you know, direct to consumer. So that totally is going to change everything. I will say, you know, on the commercial side in the space that we operate in, we're pretty safe right now. There's just not a ton of innovation that's out there. We're still using paper apps and not using Accords because everyone wants their own proprietary apps filled out. And so thinking, you know, hey, we're in 2018 and I still got to fill out a 10-page piece of paper to get a quote is kind of crazy. So, you know, carriers are going to hold off on that commercial side. Will that evolve and change? I hope. And as, you know, the market shrinks a little bit and you get these niche providers that the carriers start to trust, they might let them be their kind of innovation test dummies because they don't have any risk in that space. So that's really kind of where I see some change going there. You know, you look at companies that tried to buck the system in commercial, like InBroker, you know, they came in with a beautiful idea. I was super excited when they, you know, said, hey, we're launching InBroker. Here's our mission. Here's what we're going to do. And they had this idea of a platform where people could go on and basically benchmark their insurance costs and coverages. The thing that they really didn't think of was that carriers wanted to hold all their data and not really give that out to anybody. And so really what happened ultimately is now they're online, you know, an e-commercial insurance broker. And with that, you know, they've had some hurdles growing. You know, what I will say is a success on the flip side of that is probably Bold Penguin. What they've done is awesome for the marketplace. And I think that, you know, disruption in the commercial side will be mirroring that because, you know, you're a hometown agent and you get a referral for a guy that does trucking or a guy that does railroads, but you've never seen that type of exposure. Bold Penguin kind of allows you that ability to log in and send it to somebody that is an expert in that. They'll help you get a quote, get a proposal, and then, you know, maybe you split some commission at the end of the day and everybody wins. I think that that's really going to change some things, and that's kind of exciting in that space.
I've interviewed Ilya Bodner from Bold Penguin, and we've had Ask Kodiak and Agent Av and Karin Soroya from Cover and Broker Lift. I think I've seen more technological innovation on the agency side than I have seen on all the other spaces. So I feel like for a young independent agent that's coming in, the digital playing field is now available where they can kind of navigate through the system and plug in the different digital pieces that they need. So I'm throwing this out to both of you. That the innovation on the agency side seems to be very robust.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would think that it can happen, and my hope is that there are young agents out there that are willing to innovate. You know, one of the things that we see is that I'm probably a weird outlier, a guy that's 34 that's in insurance. There's really not a ton of me. And there's also not a ton of 22-year-olds coming into the industry that are thinking in a lens that I don't have. What there is a lot of is some people that are 45 to 65 that are kind of checking out, and, you know, they've seen it and they're ready to get out of the market. And that's my fear for those folks is, you know, hopefully that they can grasp onto the things that are coming as quickly as they get developed. I don't feel that age group, you know, will be driving that innovation. It's going to be the outliers for sure. But I think that the opportunity to be different and to be innovative, it's totally out there. The sky is the limit 100%. You know, if you can dream up an idea, there's 7,000 different services online that, you know, you could basically, you know, if it's a virtual quote, or maybe it's something with VR, you can find a provider that could help that dream come true.
Yeah. So for an independent agent that's focused on personal lines, you had words of warning or worry for them. So besides like trying to be innovative and trying to get into the technology, what else can they do? Should they begin to look at commercial line space, life, health, other areas where they can try to diversify? Should they niche? What are some of the things they can do if there are independent agents out there that are really nervous about the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the keys there is, you know, really knowing what your book is. You know, if your book is kind of that good old boy network in a small town, you know, you might not be that ripe for disruption because those people are going to value the relationship, and that innovation curve's a little bit behind the waves a little bit. They're still in that early adopter phase. But, you know, if you're in a big city and you're, you know, a little fish in this gigantic sea of insurance brokers, what's the difference out there? I mean, so that's really what you've got to find is, what's your value proposition? What do you offer to your clients? And then really kind of think, you know, long and hard about that. And, you know, the sky's the limit there. You know, if you want to be a guy that, you know, does insurance training or talks about, you know, certain risks, you know, why you should have an umbrella, and you know, you go to certain meetings, it's really just getting out there and figuring out how to transcribe that value to your end client, and then, you know, be able to articulate that well. I think that's key. You know, what I would also advise them to, you know, if they want to do something, think about doing that, dream big and swing big on it, because those changes, they're going to have to come from them. The carriers are not going to give them a shiny toy to play with and say, okay, this is brand new for you. Now you're going to be able to get more clients. Ultimately, because they're going to figure out a way to, you know, push that agent out, because that's how they're going to make money. So the agents are the ones that are going to have to come up with these shiny toys and shiny new things that, you know, are out there. And I think that insurance historically has kind of done a bad job of really thinking of innovative things. You know, think about Uber. Uber really didn't change taxis. I mean, it's still a car. You're still going point A to point B. What they did was basically change how you called a taxi and how taxis picked you up. I mean, it wasn't really that far out there, but it really changed how people, you know, were able to obtain these things. And so it's little nuances. Like if you could come up with something like that on the personal line side, you're going to concrete yourself and you're going to be safe.
Yeah, Garrett, it also sounds like the carrier's relationship with the independent agent is changing as well.
Totally.
Yeah, and especially on the personal line side. So they may be forced to make changes just because the carriers, even if the relationships are secure, the carriers may force them to make those changes.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you look at personal lines auto, I don't know what the latest stat is, but it always runs hot. I mean, your trade combined ratio on that's always over 100. It seems like, you know, from a nation perspective. So, you know, if the carriers are losing money on auto, they need to figure out a way to, you know, make money on that. You know, does that start with AI on their side? Totally. I think that there's an arms race right now that is going on behind the scenes that no one else sees, that these carriers are really trying to figure out these algorithms from an underwriting aspect to where they can get rid of a large, group of underwriters that are just doing personal lines, and it can just be a mathematical equation. And the way that personal lines is rated, AI favors that. I think that Lemonade showed it can be a success. So that's, one way the carrier is going to make money. I think the other way is they're going to start trimming those commissions. And that's a scary thing for agents, because that's how we get our revenue. And so what I will say is that I tell all my agents, all my CSRs, all my account managers, all my producers, is that we've got to start thinking about our relationships in a lens to where the carriers really work for us. And when you start thinking about that and using that lens, you realize that, ultimately there are a ton of different carriers you can do business with. If your relationship's not working out and you can't have those conversations with your partners, your sales managers, maybe your vice presidents, maybe it's time to move some things around. Be open with those carriers and ask them, hey, what do you guys need? What are lines that, you would like to see from us? In our niche, unfortunately, I don't have that ability, but, hey, if they ask, if we needed some life and financial, I'm sure I could drum that up for them. It seems like that's always a hot button for sales managers, but there's things that they need and there's things that you need. And so if you can have that open conversation and not try and, go behind anybody or try and do a dance to really get what you want, things are going to be better in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, you had brought up something in your intro about reaching out to high school students. That's the first time I've heard of an attempt to introduce the topic of insurance to high school students. And yours, what you described was getting the CISR designation. So what was the brainchild behind that? How did that come to be? Because I find the issue that we deal with over at Insurance Nerds is that millennials and now this Gen Z population that's coming behind it are very distrusting of insurance. And so you're going beyond just college recruiting all the way down to the high school level. How did that come to be?
Well, really, it was we first read about it being done through the National Alliance. So they found a high school in Sabine Pass, and they actually developed a program to put into a high school. It was a year-long program, and the idea was that they would complete the program with their CISR degree. Or I think, after a year or two of fixing the process, they were going to develop it and eventually train these kids to have a designation after they complete their year of insurance class. And it was a really, really interesting idea because we hadn't heard about it before either, and no one was really going and trying to get them that young, but I do agree that the millennials can sometimes see insurance as a faceless industry, but a lot of it was first going to the high schools, making the relation and really explaining the opportunities first and retelling the history of the industry, and then talking about what the future could be as far as opportunities for their students. And so the Sabine Pass program is actually pretty new. I think it was built in 2016 or 17, and they just graduated their first class and everything went well. I think they partnered with Higginbotham to do like an actual agency tour, and a few other agencies to try to get them to actually go out and get experience and be able to talk to professionals in the industry. And so in San Antonio, we wanted, after reading that idea and then reaching out to the National Alliance and expressing interest in bringing their Houston program or Sabine Pass program over to San Antonio, we're right in the middle of trying to make connections and working with them and trying to get some sort of program in place right now. Actually, their program is quite developed actually, and so working with high schools can be somewhat complicated, but we just found out that we're going to get the CTE accreditation from the state that allows the state to fund the high schools. So the program would have no cost to any of the high schools. It's a pretty good process.
Yeah, I'm also worried about the next generation of producers. So it's, I guess it's one thing to train for some back office, but then it's another to train producers. What is the IIASA? And maybe Garrett can speak up to this as well, since you're hiring them as well. What's the struggle with hiring new producers and getting them trained?
Man, that's a great question. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit in my answer. One of the things that, Chris mentioned is this program, and I sit on the committee chair for the education committee for the IIASA. And so, there's been this message that's been driven down through everybody in the industry. And it seems that the industry is pretty well aware that, by 2020, there's going to be almost 400,000 jobs that are, a need, that are going to be people retiring and leaving, and there's nobody coming in for these jobs. And so, we've got to build that pipeline. And I think that, as a committee person, and also as somebody that would hire people, we've got to do a better job bringing people into this industry. And I think that the high school program is a great idea. It kind of gives them that back office exposure. We've also tried to do a program with veterans that's been a challenge that, we'd love to see it work, but, we're still trying to fight through that. And it's ultimately bringing people that don't have an insurance background into insurance. And so kind of transitioning that to producers, the real fear that I've got, and I guess, technically I'm a millennial, but I also grew up without a cell phone. I learned how to drive using, a paper map. My first sales job, I was a workers' comp field underwriter, and I literally had a laminated map of Central Florida where I was located to drive around. I didn't have GPS then. Like, that was a new thing. And so, like, I've got to see kind of the whole shift. So I've adopted technology, and now I'm pretty comfortable with it. What that did allow for me is to have those developed relationships where I can have conversations. My fear is that a lot of millennials and, this Generation Z that are coming in, they've been so tied into their phones. They haven't developed, those social skills that are really important from a producer aspect to really be successful. And that's kind of going to be that next challenge, is really building not how to sell, but how to have a conversation that's valuable for these folks. And that's what I really see as a hurdle. For us, a big thing for me, just hiring producers, is I almost always look outside of the producer space, because it seems like either, people jump ship and they're looking for a better split, or you just get somebody that wants to work 30 hours and play golf on Friday. It's rare to find that super hungry producer that wants to go out after it and just run downtown and get business. And, for us, it can be a challenge because we're so niched, and, building those relationships take time. And so it's a challenge there, but, we look for people that are outside of insurance that, might have some either software sales background or some sort of service sales background. That way they get the idea of how to, sell a untangible value product, and, we can train them on the insurance side.
Yeah, my experience with agencies hiring producers is they hire a handful, and then they just unleash them with very little training and very little proper compensation. And so, you hope that one can survive. Do they still do it that way?
Yeah, oh, totally. I mean, when I was on the carrier side and I ran a direct sales operation, that's what we do. We literally hey, are you breathing? Can you do stuff? Great, you're hired. Good luck out there. We'll get you through the training course, and hopefully it works out. But yeah, that's the reality, is that it's turn and burn. There's not a lot of, development around that stuff. And I think that's a key thing in this industry that's got to change.
Well, that's a key for the type of person that you're trying to reach out to, because I think you both fit into the millennial category. Mm-hmm. They have a different social view, the social prism of the world, and to them, it's they want to be trained. They don't, it's not. I bet you can find that producer that is aggressive, that wants to go out and do it. But, I think in the initial stages, a lot of millennials, Garrett, you hit on like a bunch of stuff here. They may not have the soft skills. They may not trust insurance. And then when you bring them in, you're not training them properly, or it's cutthroat. So they're not, they're struggling financially. It just seems like a complete recipe for our industry not being able to get adequate numbers of producers to come in and help.
Yeah, no, I think that you're 100% right there. And one thing that I tell people, and this comes from an employer standpoint, is, as employers, we've got a duty to develop our people. And when you start thinking about, developing people, I would rather, let somebody take some training, or maybe they find out, hey, I want to be a speaker. And so then we'll develop a program for them to go get training to become a public speaker. If I don't do that, they're going to leave and go to another company that does it. And so what employers are fearful of is that, man, if we give them this training or we allow them to develop, somebody else is going to steal them away from us. And, the reality is, look, if you don't, they're going to leave. If you do, they're probably going to leave. So that's where you've got to have that good culture, because if you have those things that are valuable, they're not going to leave. They're going to say, okay, great. You've done these things for me. You've helped me develop as a person, and that builds loyalty. And that's really what we've got to do as a total industry.
I heard a quote once from some CEO. It had something to do with there's a great fear in corporate environment of investing a lot in our employees, training them, and they leave, when the real issue is that we don't train them and they stay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now you have unskilled and employees that just don't fit what you want to try to accomplish to try to advance. So from the IIA, is the IIASA a part of a larger national organization?
We're actually completely independent from any other entity.
Okay.
Which gives us a lot of freedom. But that being said, we do work a lot with our state association, the IIT, which is connected to the the national
Big I.
Big I.
The Big I, all the acronyms, because the problem is endemic across the nation. So I'm assuming, Chris, that you have items on the agenda for more of this type of engagement with the younger crowd.
Definitely, yeah. Well, actually, so talking about AI and that topic, so Garrett is actually doing a presentation for us on March 29th. And the topic's going to be about basically automating the boring stuff. Really knowing what to look for in your agency, and if you can automate it and if you can save time, then why not do it? So, I mean, there are plenty of tools out there to reduce the time spent on little things and spending more time on customer service and building loyalty. We're also having our trade fair on April 5th, and it's a good chance for any young person to get out there and meet other people in the industry.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit more? What on April 5th? What's going on? Who's going to be there? Why should someone attend?
So our trade fair, we're going to have about 55 to 60 exhibitors, and it's going to be right in the heart of San Antonio, which is being renovated and everything. It's very nice, and it's a good chance for any kind of carrier, any kind of loss control, contract restoration, really anyone that's in the insurance process to get their name out in front of agents, because we have about 250 to 300 agents coming, and you know, we're trying to facilitate any kind of business and new relationships to happen.
Yeah,
and we're
great.
also giving away 2 Kentucky Derby tickets and event tickets to, one of the horse races here in San Antonio as well.
That's worth it all by itself, right?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Will there be presentations and educational things that are going on there at that time?
Yep. So there will be. We're having about 3 or 4 different speakers. One speaker from the National Alliance talking about their high school program, their veterans program, and really their college program as well. There's going to be hopefully a representative from one of the veterans organizations there talking about why they should hire veterans and the benefits of having a veteran work inside of your agency. And then we're also having her name's Priscilla Ohlert, and she is the dean or the president of the University of Houston downtown and their insurance and risk management program. And so she's going to be talking about their program or the University of Houston downtown's program and the benefits of it, and that it's going to run right along with veterans, and because I think that their program, their degree is mostly online, so it's highly mobile and you can take it from anywhere.
Oh, that's fantastic. We'll put all that information into the show notes for those that are listening. We can find it. There is a link. I'll grab it from Chris, and we'll put it on there just to make sure everyone can find it. Gentlemen, I like to also give a little bit of personality to the podcast, and so that the listeners can get a little bit of sense of how the guests that come on the show, how they operate and things that they like and enjoy. But specifically, I've become a productivity nut. And so, it's so much technology. It's so both easy and difficult to get swamped in trying to be productive. So, Chris, I'll start with you. Do you have any particular tools or techniques that help you stay productive?
Mm-hmm. So, at the association, there are 2 employees here. It's myself, a 25-year-old, and then Robert Crosby, who's the executive director, who is 72. And so I've been fortunate enough to work with him, and he's mentored me quite a bit, and I've learned so much from him. But one of the things that he does that I actually picked up was I bought a Stephen Covey day-to-day calendar. So I'm paper, plus I have a task list, but it's basically 2 days per page, and I get to write anything that I want on there, and it keeps me. It's my personal Bible. Without it, is my life in it.
I love it, the Franklin Covey.
Oh yeah, Franklin
calendar.
Covey.
I remember that.
It's actually very useful. It keeps me very organized.
Yeah, Tony Kanyas from Insurance Nerds is a giant fan of bullet journaling, and I think modern technology, the digital part of it, has not done a very good job of keeping people organized. And I see more and more people going old school when it comes to calendars and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can type out anything that I want to, but it's easily forgotten for me. So for me to actually go in and handwrite it down, it helps me remember little things. Because running an association, it's so easy, or really any business, it's so easy for the little details to just go right by you. You have to make sure you document everything.
Sure, I love that. Garrett, what tools or techniques do you use to stay productive?
I'm also kind of old school with a new school twist. So I do believe in the calendar. You know, I've worked in a multitude of different roles in insurance, and I think that, you know, every role is different, and how you strategically plan your day. You know, generally kind of a rule of thumb is I kind of leave email for the start and the end of the day and try and get everything else done kind of in the middle. But really, I block my time out. I do use my, you know, email calendar as a great tool for that. In terms of, you know, actually doing stuff, I do handwrite a ton of stuff. I take a ton of notes. It's just proven psychologically that, you know, when you actually handwrite something down, you retain it a lot more. But really to kind of manage that productivity is just holding yourself accountable. I block my time out, unless it's a project that I need to get done and I can actually allocate my whole day to doing it. I usually do like an hour block. And so, you know, if, hey, I've got a certain amount of tasks, I'll allocate an hour to it. If I get done sooner than an hour, then boom, great, I'm moving on to the next one. If not, you know, I'll get to that stopping point at the hour mark and move on to the next thing on my list.
Yeah, I see the world going a little bit old school here.
I try to keep a notebook or anything to write any kind of idea down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just showing Chris over the webcam my notebook. I can't get away from it. I tried to go digital. I tried to type notes. It didn't feel comfortable. I tried to write the notes into an iPad. It didn't feel right. So now I have a notebook with a app that I can write the notes, scan it, and it emails with tags. It emails it, so I have a digital version of it, and then the pages I can erase with water. So I'll put notebook. I'll put my notebook on. But yeah, I see more people going old school. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, I've tried the phone thing because I'm kind of a thinker, and I'll come up with like a crazy idea at a random time. You know, maybe I'm traveling, catching a 10 o'clock at night flight, and then I have a light bulb comes on, and then I'll try and, you know, like go into my phone and notes and just type something. So I try and remember it, but then it's like I go back and look 3 days later, and I'm like, what in the hell is this? Like, what did I mean?
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, well, this isn't going to work out. So, you know, I think that there's some things out there. I think voice recordings could possibly be a cool tool, but, you know, just going old school and writing it, it's hard to beat that for sure.
Yeah, and I do remember it. I do remember better when I write it down. So I'll go along with you there. Books. We always end the show with books, and Chris, I'll throw it onto your side. Have there been any books that have been influential in your personal or business life?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's always very important to develop good habits. So one of the books that kind of changed the way that I thought about doing things day to day in my lifestyle and the little things is it's called As a Man Thinketh. It's by James Allen. And it talks about basically how, you know, you just have to do action first, and then that leads to, you know, good thoughts throughout the day. And it's a great book.
I've never heard of it. I will look that up and make sure I get that on the show notes.
Yeah, it's a quick read, but the content is amazing.
Garrett, any books that you found influential in your business or personal life?
Yeah, I've got a lot. I'm a big reader. You know, one of the things I used to do with my employees was, you know, literally make them read a book a month. So I'll give you kind of the business side of it and personally. So personally, one of the books that was a challenge for me to get through, and I got things out of it, was 48 Laws of Power. If you can get through that whole book, which it's almost 400 pages, and, you know, power through it, you know, you should get a medal. There's a lot of great stuff in there, and then there's a lot of things that, you know, you can take with a grain of salt. So I'd say personally, that's awesome. From a pure business standpoint, there's two real great books, and one that I absolutely live by is the 4 Disciplines of Execution. I've built 40X processes in many companies now, and they do make a phenomenal difference. So if you're an agency owner, if you work for a carrier and you're in leadership and you haven't read this book, literally go buy it today. I believe Stephen Covey is one of the authors. I forget the other one, but I usually have 2 copies just in my office just in case somebody wants one. So that's phenomenal. If you're not a leader, another great business book is the 80-20 principle. I think from a leadership aspect, they released a new version called the 80-20 manager. I think that that's actually better than the 80-20 principle, because I felt, in the 80-20 principle, they get repetitive at about page 100 and then you're wanting to fall asleep. But there's a lot of great things. I think the Pareto principle stands phenomenal there. And then one last book from a leadership aspect is Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. Phenomenal book. I think from a leadership journey and a perspective there, it's really good. If you're an e-reader person, get the deluxe version. It's got some extra video content in there. It's well worth the extra $2 on Amazon.
Well, this is why I asked the question, because half these books I've never heard of before, so I'll have to make sure to check them out, especially anything by Covey. I'm fanatical about getting his stuff, so I'm surprised I haven't heard about the four disciplines of execution. So I will get those on the show notes. That's why I asked the question. I'm not always trying to learn from the audience as well. Gentlemen, this has been great. So you have March 29th coming up. There's what is that exactly, Chris?
It's called AI in Your Agency. Automate the boring stuff.
I love that.
Garrett's going to be talking about some of the tools available today you can start using to spend less time on the back end and spend more time working with clients and customer service.
Is that a webinar?
We actually decided yesterday it was going to be recorded. So
fantastic. But that's in person.
Well, I'm sorry?
Is that going to be in person with a recording?
Yes.
Okay. And then on April 5th, you have your big event.
Our big event, yes, our annual trade fair.
Okay. And we'll make sure we get links up for anyone that's going to be in San Antonio, and we'll see what we can do about the recording on the March 29th and whether we can get that up in some way. Guys, I learned a lot. I really appreciate you both coming on, spending St. Patrick's Day with me. I now give you permission to go out and have a green beer.
All right.
Well, thank you. Yeah. No, it was a pleasure. We enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
My guests this week have been Garrett White and Chris Prewit. Again, guys, thanks so much.